Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Cat, and in this video we are going to learn map in Go. So let's talk about map in Go. Don't worry, this time this is not going to be a geographical map. A map in programming is a way to organize data and store data in pairs. So like a name and its meaning, think of it as a labeled container where each label helps you quickly find what's inside. Alright, so what is map in Go? A map is a data structure that lets you store values with a key. You can think of it as a dictionary or a filing system. The key is like the label or word you can use to identify something. The value is the thing itself, the information you are storing, right? For example, in a kitchen you might have n number of jars placed over there, and those jars contain ingredients, right? So the label on each jar could be sugar, salt, or spices, or something else, right? But then the contents, the value in each jar, are the actual sugar, salt, or the spices, right? So basically we are going to store the value in a key or key and the value pairs. Key will be the label, and then value will be actual contents of what we are going to store there, right? Actual data. So using that key we should be able to fetch those data quickly. Alright, so let's see how the map works in Golang. So how can we create a map in Golang? For that, Golang says you have a map keyword over there, and how can you do that? So let's take one example over here. I will say okay, pantry, let's say pantry, and then I'm going to say create a map, because the pantry will have lot of values and the map contains of course unordered values. That means there won't be any order maintained over there. So I'll say okay, let's create a map. Then how can we create a map? To create a map we need to use a make function. In Golang we have a make function. Golang says if you want to create a map you need to use make function. So very first we need to use make function, and then the data type which it is expecting. So in this case you can see here it is expecting a type over there that is nothing but a data type. So we need to say okay, create a map of a specific size or something, or you can just leave the size as it is. So I can say okay, let's create a map. How can we do that? For that, Golang has map keyword, and since we know inside a map we should have data in key and value pairs, that means data will be there like key, and then of course in a programming case we need to use string always there as a data type to be of not data type, but if you are going to define a key, the key should be always of type string. So here okay, we created a map, we created a dictionary, you can say, or pantry this time we are creating. So the key will be there as string value, and then the value can be of any type, right? Label is of course going to be a string value, and then the value can be anything. Value can inside those jars. If we'll talk about the kitchen, inside those jars we can have cookies, we can have spices, but then the label will be spices and jars, right? So I'll say here okay, label will be of type string, but then the value can be anything. So for that we can say okay, any, the value can be anything, not like this but any, right? But we'll check any later. In this case I'm going to store the value as a string. You can, since value can be anything, then it can be of a specific data type as well, right? So this time I'm going to say okay, I'm going to store this is string only. Okay, now we have pantry ready over there. We need, how we can add item into this pantry. So for that we need to say okay, use this pantry, and then use this square bracket over there, and then inside that square bracket you need to put the key name. So here I'm going to say, let's say sugar, and then the value is going to be, let's say, and this naming can be anything whichever you want in any of the cases, camel case, Pascal case, or any cases. So I'm going to use this small cases, camel case, and then I'll say okay, this pantry will have sugar, and then I can say it as, let's say, brown sugar. All right. Now this pantry, since this pantry is a map, it can store n number of key and values, right? That means it can store n number of jars, and then those jars will have a label as a key, right? So here I can say, okay, pantry will have, let's say this time I will say bottle, and then this bottle will have, let's say, water. So I'll say water. And what else? We can have one more item in the pantry, and I'll say this time salt, right? And this will have seasoning. All right. Now we have pantry ready over there. We created a pantry of type map string, and then the value is of course going to be string, right? And since we created, you can see here we created a map of type string and string. The value is going to be of type string, and if I'll try to assign a different data type over here, let's say 1, it won't allow us because we have defined the data type over there, right? So this should always be a string, since we have defined as a string. Now we have all those items in our pantry. What next we are going to do? We are just going to, let's say, print this onto the console, and I'll say pantry. Let's check what are all those items present in the pantry. So for that we just need to run this code, run this program, and we will see what items are there in the pantry. We can see here we have bottle, and this bottle has water. We have salt, and this salt has content as seasoning, and then sugar also we have, but content is brown sugar, right? So this is the way we can define map in golang, and then we should be able to assign a specific data or a specific contents using key and value. So this is always going to be key and then value. And why we are using key in map? Because we should be able to access this data as quickly as possible. We don't need to go through each of the data one by one and then take out those required data. So using just key, it will directly go to the specific data and take it out. So what next we are going to do? Since we have map, we have this much of pantry, but then if we are going to use this pantry, right, of course either we are going to empty this pantry, or we are going to update it with latest data as well, right? So basically, in other words, we are just going to perform certain operations on this map. That means we should be able to update this value, right? Since we know that the value is getting stored in a data key and value pair, and the key is of course the label, and the value is content inside those containers. And if it is a container, we should be able to change those values. We should be able to replace those values, right? That's the concept of variable, correct? Because the map will have a data as a variable. We should be able to change that at any time whenever we want, or whenever it is required, correct? So okay, we have now very first thing what we need is, let's say we are going to bake something using this pantry, right? Pantry items. Let's say we are going to use this brown sugar. So how can we take out this brown sugar? We access this whole pantry. Okay, we have all this pantry over here, but then what if I want only this sugar item? So let's do that. What I can say here is, okay, fmt.println, if you want only sugar, you can take out sugar only. And how can you do that? For that I will say, okay, just use this pantry, fine, and then again the square bracket you need to use, but this time you need to provide the key as well here. You don't need to give the value, right? You just need key to find out the specific content or data which is present inside this map. Cool. So I'm going to say, okay, get me sugar. Cool. If the key or label present there inside the map with this key sugar, that means we'll be getting the value of that specific key, the corresponding value of the key. So let me just save it and run this program, and we'll see if that works. So We can see here we got brown sugar. Why? Because we are accessing the specific item, a specific data using this key, and that key is there. That is why we are able to access it. What if I will try to access something else and that data or the content or the key is not present inside this map? So let's see that. So in place of sugar, I will just say, okay, get me cold drink. Let's see if that works. You can see here it won't give us cold drink because we don't have cold drink over there with this key, right? That means if data is not there, you will be getting empty data. There won't be any data. Correct? This is how we are going to access a specific data or a specific item using its key name or label. Got it? So now next we know that this is how we are going to fetch data. So I can say, okay, fetch data using key name or label, you can say, if we'll talk in terms of kitchen, right? So we know that how can we take out data. Now what if we want to not provide but update the data? So let's say we have used all this sugar. Okay, now this time I just want to update this sugar with white sugar instead of this brown sugar. Can we do that? So what if we want to update the data, right? Update the data. Of course we can do that, but then we need to say, okay, you want to update sugar, let's update that. So I'll just use this pantry map, and then of course you need to put the key name over there. So this time the key name is going to be sugar. So I'll say, since we are going to update sugar this time, so we'll say, okay, update this sugar. Now we are going to assign the new data to a specific key. So I will say this time white sugar. So I'll say white sugar, and then let's see if that works, if the we are able to update the specific data. So after that, what I will do, I will try to access this sugar once more so that we can see if that data is updated over there or not. So let me just save it, and I will run the code once more, and we will see that if that works fine. You can see here, till here we have brown sugar, and we have used those all brown sugar, and then this time we just want to update the brown sugar with the white sugar, or we just want to replace the brown sugar with the white sugar. So we can see here now if we'll access sugar, we'll have a white sugar since we have updated the sugar over there, right? So this is how we can access the data from the map, and then we can update the data back to the map using the key. So in map, key is very important to perform certain specific actions or operations, right? Next, what we are going to do is, what if, let's say, later on we don't want this salt over here, okay? What if we want to remove this salt from here? So we need to delete this salt, and then of course the value will also be deleted. What if you want to, throw that jar out of the kitchen? You don't want that jar to be there, correct? If you just remove that jar, that means key and the content inside those jars will also get removed. That means this whole data will get removed from this pantry, correct? So how can we do that? So for that we need to say, okay, you want to delete this salt, then we know that we should be able to perform all these functionalities, but we need to use key for that, key name or label name for that. So I'm going to say, okay, pantry, but not like this. Golang you cannot delete like this. You need to use delete function for that. And how can you do that? So just like make function, Golang is giving you a delete function. So you just need to use this delete function. It will delete those data present inside a map. So next, what we are going to provide in this function is, it is expecting a map here. So we need to provide this map since we have this map, pantry, and then we need to provide the key name as well. So using that key, it will delete the specific data. So I'll just say salt. We don't need this salt over there. So I'll just delete this, and let me print this pantry once more, and we will see if we have salt after deletion, right? I'll just save it, and Let me rerun the code and see if that works. We can see here this time very first we have bottle, salt and sugar as well there, but then we have updated brown sugar with the white sugar, that is there, fine, and then we have deleted salt, right? And finally we can see here we don't have salt in that map. That means the specific salt key has been key as well as its data contents has been deleted from the map. Cool. So this is how we can delete the item from the map, this is how we can access the item from map, and this is how we are going to update item inside the map. So everywhere performing this operation on into a map, we need the key or label name so that we can update those data directly. Alright, now let's take one more example, and here what we will try to do is we will try to put, instead of salt, let's say we have deleted the salt, we want to put one more data in this map, right? And we know that, how can we do that? I will say okay, this time assign one data, I'll say spices. Alright, and then in spice, not spices, we can say spice, and then in that I will say, let's say chili flakes, not flakes, chili powder you can say, right? Let me just save it and then we'll see if this new item is getting added to this specific pantry or not. I will just run this code and we should be able to see that here. We can see that spice is now added and the value is also be there, that is chili powder. So this is how we can add. We already know that here, but after performing certain operations, create, update, read, and then finally we updated one more, not updated but added one more value over there. We are done with this. Now there's one more concept in map. What is exactly that? So map will always, there are certain rules in map. Map will always contain a unique key. That means a map cannot have a duplicate key, right? How can we say that? So let's see that. I'm going to say okay, spice is going to be chili powder. What if I'm going to say okay, pantry of spice, and this time I want spice to be, let's say, cardamom, right? So then this map should, cardamom, what's the spelling of cardamom? Yeah, so I want these two spices over there in the map. Can be able to do that. Let's save this and see if that works. Let me just clear this console and then run this program once more. We should be able to see that. Okay, let's see. We have spices as cardamom over there, but this chili powder is not there. Why is that so? Since we know the concept of map, map will always contain a unique key. But here we can see this spice is not the unique key. This spice is already been defined there. So what this will do is this value will get actually replaced instead of this chili powder. That means the previous value. So always map will have a latest value with the duplicate key. Alright, but then key should always be unique. That's the concept of map. Cool. Now this time we saw the map as a type of data we are storing here as a string, but then we can have data of type multiple data type. So you can store a map of string and integer, you can store map of string or any. And how can you do that? So let me just show you that. Instead of this pantry, I will say okay, this pantry have bottle and then capacity of bottle should be, let's say, 500 ml, but then it won't allow you because you are restricting this pantry to store the information of its type string, data type string, right? You are restricting that jar to contain only string data, but this time I want to put any data inside those jars. So I'll say okay, use any, and then I'll save this. You can see we are able to assign this 500 over there. And what if I'll just console this? It should be working in the expected way. So I'll say okay, println, and then just check this pantry is having all those data properly or not. I'll just run this program and we should be able to see that. We can see here we have bottle as well there of capacity 500. That's cool. That means we can put any of the data inside a map which is required or whatever we want, right? Now next what we are going to see here is, let's make it back to a string, and then I'll just say okay, it will contain water. Let me just save it, and this is cool actually. We know that. How can we do that? And then what if we want to make a certain, let's say we want to make a specific decision based on the item which is present inside the pantry. So let's say if inside the pantry we have brown sugar, then we are going to make coffee. All right, and if brown sugar is not there, that means we are going to say okay, brown sugar is empty. That means brown sugar is not there, we need to buy the sugar, right? But we can say one more thing over here. Since sugar is there, that means of course the jar would be there in the kitchen, so that we can place the sugar inside the jars. That means, in other words, we can say container is there, but then inside the container we don't have content if it is consumed fully, right? So let's see that. I'm going to say okay, this content is consumed fully. So I'll say okay, just make this content as empty since we have used that content. So I'll say sugar and then I will do empty. Let me just save it, and now again check back the pantry items. So for that we need to print this pantry items. I'll just save it and rerun it. We can see here sugar is there, but there's no data. That means container is jar is placed over there in the kitchen already there, but inside that jar we don't have sugar, right? Now there's one more scenario over here. What if I will just comment this line, not like this, I'll just comment this line and I will comment this line as well, right? Now in this scenario this jar is also not there because we have not created a jar for that, right? So what we will get in this scenario, let me just, instead of pantry, first let me just show you. I will try to access this value sugar, save it, and then here I just want to make certain decision based on this sugar. So I'll say okay, sugar, if sugar, not like this, but we need to access the value. So I'll say pantry of the sugar, right? If sugar is going to be empty, let's say empty, that means empty string, right? If this is going to be empty, that means I'm going to go in market and I'm going to buy the sugar. So I'll say okay, if empty dot println, and then I will say I will go in market, I will go in market and buy sugar, right? Next, if sugar is there, if sugar is not there, or else I won't go, that means I'll say okay, I won't go. We know that how if condition works in golang. So I'll say else I won't go means I will prepare something. Let's say I will prepare sweet. I will prepare sweet or coffee or anything, whichever you want. So I'll prepare sweets, and then let me just save it and see if that works. So what I'll do is I'll just clear this console and run it once here. Now you can see we have brown sugar over there, sugar, okay, that's fine. Now you can see here I have used all of those sugars before making any decision, right? And then after that I'm going to make a decision over there. So you can see here I have printed sugar as well, but then the value is not coming over there, it is coming empty. That is why you are not able to see that those values here on the console. And you can see here, okay, let me just put one more thing over here so that you should be able to see that properly, value of sugar. All right, let me just save it and run this once more so that you should be able to understand it clearly. So now you can see here value of sugar, and then nothing is coming over there. That means empty value is there, sugar is not there. And then we are making decision, okay, if sugar is empty, that means I will go in the market and buy sugar, right? That condition actually becomes true because sugar is empty, and then I should go in the market and buy sugar, correct? What if sugar container itself is not there? Even if we are going to buy sugar, we'll just buy sugar, come back into kitchen, and then we'll put the sugar inside the container, inside the jar, right? Because we know that jar is there, so we can put the sugar. What if jar is not there and we are just going to buy sugar only? In that case, we should have a container to store that sugar, right? So when I will go in the market, when you will go in the market, you will buy jar as well instead of sugar only, right? So I will say, okay, this time let's remove this container as well. There won't be any container over here. Let me just save this and run this code once more. You can see here, even though we don't have jar over there, but then this condition is still true. And since we are making decision based on this condition, so we are going to buy sugar only. That is of course correct. This sugar is not there, we are going to buy sugar. But then how we will know that sugar container is also not there, so sugar jar is also not there, right? We need to buy jar as well along with the sugar, correct? That is the exact issue here. Even though that is not there, there's no information present over there so that we can make a right decision, correct? So in golang, everything which you are defining over there, if that is not present there, that means you will be getting empty data over there instead of saying something else. But then how can we decide? That's the actual issue here. So for that, golang says, okay, you need to check this condition before. You need to check this properly by yourself. All right. And how can we do that? How can we check that? Okay, if this is there or not, if this container is there or not, we need to check, right? So we can say, okay, that's completely fine. Sugar will not be there. That is completely fine. But then I need one more condition here to check whether sugar container is there or not. And if it is not there, I need to buy along with that sugar. So for that, I'm going to say, okay, use one more thing over here. Not one more thing. Instead of using like this, you can say, okay, let me just, yeah, that's fine. So instead of using this kind of thing, comparing it with equals to operator, you can just say, okay, value, I will give you value as well as one more variable value over there. Along with the value, you will be getting one more data which will say, okay, if this specific container is there inside the map or not, if this map will contain those specific keys or not. If that does not exist, this value will be coming as false, and if it exists, this value will come as a true. So for that, I will just give you, just use this map. I will give you two property out of that. One will be exact your value, and then other will say, okay, this specific key exists or not, this specific jar or container exists there in the kitchen or not. So I'll say exist there in the pantry or not. So I'll say, okay, exists, right? And then of course you can use this variable operator over there to create a variable. So now you can see you will get two values. One is of course the value string, this string, and then the exist will tell you whether that container exists or not, right? So here I'm going to say, okay, value is also there. Now I can make a correct decision. Okay, if okay, value here, okay, we need to check for the value as well. So I can say, okay, value, or else we can say, okay, that's completely fine. It will give us two value, then we need to check the value as well. So here we can say, okay, let's say value is going to be empty. That means sugar is empty. Of course, in that case, we need to buy the sugar, but then we need to buy the container as well if this does not exist, if the jar is not in the kitchen or in the pantry. So we can say, okay, let's do this here. I will say value and exists, right? And then of course we are going to use this. So let's just cut it from here. Let's just cut it from here. I will paste it over here, and then we can be easily use this variable. So I'll say, okay, value is empty over there. That's completely fine. Value is empty, but then I need to check for the container as well. So for that we can say, okay, this exist will give you the if that a specific key or container is there or not. So I'll say, okay, if exist, and we know that this exist is coming as a boolean, type of the value is boolean, so we don't need to put comparison operator over there, right? We can directly use this. So if this exist means, of course we are going to buy the sugar only, right? And if it does not exist, then we can have else part as well. And in this scenario, of course, we are seeing nested if else condition. All right, we can have n number of nested if else condition, but we need to avoid those scenarios as much as possible. So here I'm going to say, in that case, if container is not there at all, I will go in the market. I will go to the market. I'll go to the market and will buy container and sugar both, right? Because in this scenario we don't have container, we need to get the container, we need to buy the container and then sugar as well, so that we can keep those sugar in the specific container. So I'll say save it now and then run it. You can see here this condition is actually getting true, because the value does not exist over there. We have not created those values, we have not created those keys in the container, in the pantry, right? So this is how we need to use existence of the key. We need to check the existence of the key is there in the map or not if we are dealing with the primitive values, because this golang will give a default value if it is not there. Even if the container is also not there, variable is also, key is also not there in the map, it will give you a default value of that, and then you won't be able to correctly make a decision based out of that expression or out of that scenario. So for that, if you're dealing with this kind of things, you need to make sure if the value exists there, and you need to make sure, of course, the property exists, that means key exists, right? So this is again one rules of map. We know that how can we create a map, we know that we perform certain functionalities over the map, and then we also checked if the specific key or container is present there inside the pantry or the map which we created, correct? Now let's do one more thing over here. How can we, instead of what I'm going to say here is, instead of printing all this, okay, let me just comment this here, and then I will say, okay, instead of printing all these things, right, all this pantry at once, what if I want to iterate through each of this item? Not iterate, but in general terms, simple terms, I can say, what if I want to take out all these items one by one, right? Because if we are going to access it with the key, then this map will have, let's say, 1,000 of different items or 100 of different items, sugar, bottle, salt, spices, and many more. So to access all those items, we cannot do it one by one, right? We know that this is a repetitive task, correct? So instead of doing one by one, we can say, okay, let's take out all those values which is present, all those keys which is present inside the map. And how can we do that? We know that for performing a repetitive task, we can use for loop, and the similar things applies here. So I'm going to use for loop here, and I can say, okay, you will have golang says, okay, I will give you key as well as value. You just need to range over this map. And what is the range actually? So we'll see that also. So here we just need to say range over this map, and then map name is of course pantry in this case. So range is nothing. what it will do is it will iterate through each of the values which is present inside this specific variable, and this variable is this variable should be of type iterable. Iterable means there should be a collection of data present over there, so that you can iterate through each of the data and then you will be getting those value back, right? Since this is map, golang says okay, if this is map, I will give you key as well as value as well, right? So I'm storing those key and value in a specific variable over here. This is how you can define over here, and then I will say okay, let me just print this and see if that works, key and value, right? So I'll say this time I'm going to use printf because I need to print a formatted string, and for that I'll say the key equals to, or we can say just key equals to, and then not dollar. In this, since we are using printf, we need to format this string. So I'll say okay, we are not sure about the value this time, right? Because this key, okay, key can be string. Of course we know that key is going to be string, but then the value can be anything, right? So for that we know that we are going to use %v, and then of course we need to provide the actual value so that those values will get replaced in place of this formatted string, and then here not a string, the formatted value. So I'll say okay, key, and then I will say value as well. Let me just save this and clear this console. We'll see how it works. We should be able to access through each of those items present. You can see here key, bottle, value. We'll do one more thing over here. I will just put \n so that it will print next. It will print on the next line on the console after printing each of the item. So let me just clear this and run it once more so that you guys can be able to see it properly. You can see here we have key sugar and the value is brown sugar, key bottle and the value is water, key salt is there and the value is seasoning, right? So we are able to iterate through each of those key and value pairs inside a map, and then the map is, of course, we need to range over those maps, and then we will be getting this key and value. We can use that inside our for loop to perform a certain repetitive task. That's what we did here. I hope you got this concept, right? And what else we have in map? We saw that map is of type string and string. We also saw that map can be of type anything, but the key should always be a string, right? So that is what the map is. All right. So if you guys are not able to understand it, or if you guys are having any issues, please let me know in the comment section. I will try to address all those as early as possible. Thank you guys. We'll meet in the next video. Meanwhile, you can put subscribe and press the bell icon.